Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to another session of the Happiness Hour. My goal here is to help us all connect, inspire, and create. If this is your first time joining us, we do this every week, live here on Zoom, with a new photography-related topic and a speaker that shares their expertise, creativity, and a little inspiration. You can find a list of upcoming presentations on my website at lindanickell.com. And if you miss a session, you can always find them linked to my YouTube channel. So please consider subscribing so that you don't miss a session. My guest tonight is Ruth Hoyt, a full-time naturalist, photographer, instructor, mentor, writer, and field guide based in Deep South Texas. She has taught and led workshops for the National Park System, and her work has been exhibited by the Smithsonian Institute of America. Ruth's images have been published by National Geographic Books, the Nature Conservancy, Texas Monthly, and the Texas Wildlife Association, just to name a few. In tonight's presentation, Ruth is going to talk about preparing your photos for submission, whether it's for a photo contest, a blog post, or a magazine article. Ruth will discuss topics including processing your images, choosing the right ones, exporting them according to required specs, and much, much more. So please fill the chat line with your questions. Welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Ruth. This is your third presentation for us, and I'm always thrilled to see you, and I'm tickled that you agreed to come back yet again. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll just get started with your presentation.
Hi, Linda. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here to share what I know. So she's already given us an introduction of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go right into my slideshow. So tonight I'm going to talk about preparing your digital photos for publication. I'm Ruth Hoyt, and I'll be taking you through this slideshow. Here are some examples of publications that you might be interested in submitting. I have entered many photo contests. This is one of my pictures from a recent contest. I've been involved with websites and blogs, although that's not my favorite thing to do, but this is one of my pictures on my website and my business card. Books, magazines, well, I've been involved in those too, and large prints. And I'm putting this in, I'm not sure if it will work or not. It's a video, it's a time lapse, and I'm not sure how it will come across on Zoom. But this is me with some friends installing a large print exhibit that's on permanent display in McAllen in a law firm. If anybody ever wants to see it, just give me a call and I'll make arrangements for you to see it. It goes all the way down this hall and around the corner, and then in some business meeting rooms as well. It's almost finished. It took 2 days to get there, but we finally got it. And what I'm holding up there is a picture of one of the grids that we created ahead of time as part of the plan. There's me hanging 2 of them. And that's what that particular wall looked like after the whole exhibit was hung. Anyway, so how to accomplish these goals? You need to know photo basics. You choose only the best. You process effectively. And you prepare to specs. So let's talk a little bit about these things. Know your photo basics. Some of you have seen me talk about these things before, but my students know the 4 aspects of every photo, whether you're looking at a photo or you're making a photo, doesn't matter. The first thing you need to notice is whether the picture is in focus. Is it sharp? And so I'm showing examples of each of these things. This picture is sharp. You look in the bird's eye and you can see the highlight in his eye is very sharp. Make sure your exposure is good, the lighting on your subject. You need to be able to see what you've photographed or what you're looking at. You want to see detail in the whites as well as the blacks. And the composition of your photos. You want to know that your viewers have a good place to look. The composition can be a leading line where you've got a line of birds like this, or it could be any other kind of pattern. And then your story. The content of the picture is the story that the photo tells. So here you can see what's going on. We've got a grackle, it's a female, and she's gathering nesting material. So there's a story going on here. And if you didn't know that's what she's doing, the caption would tell you. My students also know that some photos have a bonus factor. I call it the wow factor. When the picture first shows up on their screen or wherever they're looking, it should have the wow factor, if possible. Not all pictures have the wow factor. All right, so let's go on and we'll talk about choosing only the best. So I know that for some of you, the mere thought of selecting your best photos is intimidating because you've got tons of pictures in your files. And this is just what my screen looks like when I have all my, well, not all, but a selection of pictures showing on my screen. You want to organize by theme or category. So I've just pulled a few, and I've got birds, of course. Everybody knows I photograph birds. And so I've pulled these together, just a general variety of birds that I've photographed here in the Rio Grande Valley. Well, that one's not from the valley. That one's from Costa Rica, and so is that. Sometimes you can flip your photos, and that's what's done here. So I put both in because I was considering both ways. And sometimes you do a real close-up, or you crop close. And I put a couple of insects just to have a little bit of diversity. Then you need to judge or cull your pictures. And I call that a review. It's a critical review. You want to do that with a heavy hand because you're narrowing down what you're going to submit. So this one I culled. I love this photo. To me, I remember the story. I remember what was happening. It was a turkey taking a dirt bath. And when she stood up, after all that wallowing in the sand, she stood up and shook off like a dog when it comes out of a pond or out of the bathtub when you're bathing it. And she shook off and dirt flew everywhere. You can even see the dirt clot on the right-hand side. That was in her plumage. Anyway, for me, it's a great picture. I love it, but it's maybe not going to be easy to read. People have a hard time seeing the face, and unless you know what's happening, it's sort of confusing. Here's another one that I think has a great story, but unless you knew things about insects, you might not recognize. This is a dragonfly. It's a roseate skimmer, and it's a male, and it's flying to the perch. It hasn't landed yet, but it's got a leaf hopper in its mouth parts. And if you know anything about leaf hoppers, they're very tiny and they hop, hence the name leaf hopper. They hop from one leaf to another. They're hard to photograph because they're so tiny. Anyway, it's not really evident in the story here in the picture, etc. You just carry on and don't cave in. It's very tempting to say, oh, that one's good, I'll keep that one in. The more you ignore the culling process, the harder your job becomes. So you want to make your final selection or selections. It depends on what you're submitting for. If you're trying to pick the home page for your website or a blog picture that you want to be on the splash screen, you need to pick just one, and that's really tough. But sometimes if you're doing a magazine article or a portfolio for a magazine or a book, then you can select more than one photo. So I like this photo. It's a brand new butterfly. It's just emerged from the chrysalis. It's lit on a red flower, so you've got lots of color. You've got a good, strong composition with diagonal lines. The antenna is sharp, the eye is sharp, the tip of the wing is sharp. Everything about this that needs to be sharp is sharp. It's exposed properly, the composition's good, and there's a story there. Here's another one. This one is sharp, it's exposed properly, the composition has a diagonal line. There's a little bit of extra room on the left, but the bird is looking into it. You could crop from both the left and the right, so you could crop square if you needed to, but I think it's good just the way it is. It's a juvenile cardinal, it's a male. He's partly through the process of getting his new colors, his adult plumage, and his beak is still gray. When they're young, when they hatch, their beaks are grayish black, and as they grow, the beak gets its new colors. Anyway, so there's a story there too. It is a bird on a stick, but it's got a lot of color, and it does have appeal. The composition of the leaves and the branches go around the bird, so it's an interesting photo. I love this roadrunner picture. He's drinking water, and water is squishing out of his beak. And if you look at the water coming out on the left side of the frame, it has taken on the shape of the beak. So it's sort of a repetitious line there, the composition. And I love the posture. He's squatted down really low. And if you look at the top line of the bird, you know, the beak, the head, the neck dips down, and then the rest of the body goes up. Plus you've got the reflection. Reflections are always nice. Okay, so you want to process your images without overdoing it. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because we don't have that much time in this segment. But this is the picture I chose to process, and I'm not showing what I did, but I made sure that there was enough contrast in the picture. I made sure that there were details in the white, details in the black, and everything in between. I cropped to a horizontal. Well, actually the photo was a horizontal to begin with, but I cropped a little bit from the top and the bottom to make it more of a panoramic shot. Then you want to prepare to specs. Those are lacewing eggs, and so I was being a little bit punny, sorry for the pun. So those are specks. Those lacewing eggs are tiny. All right, so moving on. My basic workflow is very simple. I use 3 applications. I probably would admit to using a few others, but for the most part, all I do is import with Lightroom, use Topaz for problem photos, use Lightroom to process, use Photoshop for making any kind of repairs if I need to, and then use Lightroom for exporting. Very simple. Lightroom, Topaz, Photoshop, and export. And I'm going to say I don't use all of those all the time. Sometimes the pictures work really well just as they are. So I import them into Lightroom, make a few adjustments on my development, and then I export them. So I'm showing some pictures that I've made over the years, and I try and always have something interesting about them. This one was shot through a window, and so it's not a picture that I would probably do anything with other than use it for slideshows and instructions. If you look in the top part, you can see some, it's not that it's blurry, but there's some artifacts from the window, and I probably could go in and make it better, but I don't like to spend a lot of time on the computer. I would much rather go out and find more photographs and photograph than just keep on working in the computer. A lot of people spend as much time working in the computer as they do on their photo expeditions when they go taking pictures, but I am an outdoors person. I'm a naturalist. I would rather be outside observing and photographing. Here we have a reddish egret, and this was on the Bolivar Flats. And there is another egret that's a reddish egret. This is a reddish egret, but it doesn't look like one because it's the white morph of the reddish egret. And what he's doing is flying away because the reddish egret that's actually red was chasing him. They get bullied sometimes here. Here's a woodpecker that I really, really like. And I've talked about this picture before. Before I knew about Topaz, this picture wasn't tack sharp. And I was able to use Topaz Sharpen to make the eye tack sharp and give the bird a better view. It was a keeper after all. This picture won first prize in its competition. It was a contest picture. Not my favorite picture, but it appealed to the judges, and so it won first place in its class. I guess they liked the contrast and the colors, the pink flower, the blue and the green and black on the bird and the yellow. But it's an example of, don't be surprised if you've got a picture that you don't think is your best, it still might do all right. Here's a meadowlark, and I just think this is one of my funny pictures because he has just dipped into the water and stood up, and he was just full of water, and he looks like somebody did that to him, and he was sort of surprised. This roadrunner got too close for me to be able to include the whole bird in the picture. So I went ahead and turned my camera vertically and got him just as a portrait. And he's holding a rock. I don't know why he was carrying this rock around, but it was quite funny. Roadrunners do present gifts to their mates or potential mates when they're courting. Sometimes the other bird will accept the gift and sometimes not. If I were a female roadrunner, I wouldn't take that rock. This one just has a lot of impact because there are so many green jays on one perch. Some pictures have more impact than others just because they're so different. Here's a green jay that has soaked itself in the water, came up to a perch and shook off. And if you look closely, you can see all the water spraying off of him. Okay, so I've got this owl and another owl picture. I took both of them for a contest and I entered both of them. I didn't cull, I probably should have culled more, but I entered this one and the next one. I like this one because I think it has they both have the same story. It's basically an owl bringing in a rat that it caught and brought it to the nest box where it had its babies. What I like about this night shot is that there's still some blue in the sky and you can see the tree line and the horizon line. I hope you can see that on your screen, but that's one of the things that I liked about this picture, that it showed the environment. The one that got first place was this one. And to me, that's just a floating bird in the black sky, but it is closer and it's a little bit more graphic. Here we got two birds interacting. And so you've got the female on the left side. She's at the end of her rope. Oh, sorry. She's at the end of her stick. She's on a perch and the male came in and I guess he got into her space and she took offense, but it's just sort of a funny reaction. I used this picture for Valentine's Day because the cactus grew into a heart shape and this cardinal, you've got the red cardinal on the green heart, and he's looking back at me and flared his tail. I just like the look of that for Valentine's Day. Okay, so for further information, you can contact me directly. This is my email address, ruth@ruthhoyt.com, and I'm on Instagram at ruthhoytphoto. And I'd like to thank you and ask if anybody has any questions. And Linda, it's all yours.
Okay, so Jackie would like you to talk a little bit about topaz and how you use it.
Okay, well, I use topaz not on every picture. I use it when I have a problem. So one of the things that I do as a nature photographer is I'm out early in the morning and late in the evening when the sun is very low in the sky or absent. Sometimes when you photograph and you don't have enough light, I raise my ISO to whatever I need it to be. Now, if I'm doing a bird sitting still, I want a 500th of a second. And so what I do is I raise my ISO to the point where I've got the ISO that matches 500th of a second. If I'm doing a bird that's flying, if I'm working on flight photography, I generally want 1/2500th of a second to capture the movement and freeze the action. Well, getting a 2500th of a second shutter speed is very difficult to do without raising your ISO. So a lot of times, if I am suffering from not having enough light, I'll raise the ISO. Sometimes it'll go to 3200, 6400, even up to 12,000. I raise my ISO. And one of the features of topaz, they have different applications, and one of the applications is called AI denoise. When you have a super high ISO like that, you're going to pick up a lot of noise, and back in the film days they called it grain, and so you start seeing the artifacts and all the different speckles of color in your pictures. So when you get a high noise picture, You can import the photo into Lightroom. And what I'll do is I'll crop it the way I want it, but nothing else. Then I open it up in Topaz AI denoise. And what that does, it allows you to denoise the photo, and it also has a sharpening feature to make it a little bit crisper. So I use Topaz AI denoise for that. And once you say apply, you're applying what denoise put in it, and it puts you back into Lightroom with the corrected image. And at this point, I go in and finish my processing and then export. So there are different applications in Topaz. So that was the denoise. There's one for sharpening. And when you go into AI sharpen, it also has a denoise feature in it too. But the main focus on the sharpening is sharpening. There's also Gigapixel, which takes a picture and makes it larger. So if let's say you've taken a picture and it's either Jpeg or else it's too small. Maybe it's a cell phone photo and it's not a very large photo. In Gigapixel, you can open up that picture and it enlarges the photo without losing the detail. It's all done with artificial intelligence. And the fourth one in that bundle is called Jpeg to RAW. And it doesn't actually make a raw photo out of the Jpeg, but it transfers a Jpeg into a digital negative, which it ends with .dng. And a digital negative, you can open it up in Camera Raw and work on your photo as if it was in RAW. They have other applications within Topaz, but those are the four basic ones that I use. I use probably denoise more than any of the others. Does that answer your question?
I think so. And if there's a follow-up, Jonathan, just put that in the chat and I'll catch it. Jackie wants to know, what is your favorite location or locations in the valley to shoot birds?
Oh my gosh, you cannot go wrong. I'm tied to private ranches for the most part. I work on private ranches. I consult with ranches. So I spend most of my time on the ranches. But to be honest, there are so many places you can go in the valley. And for a very low entry fee, $5, $3, depending on where you're going. There are so many. We have all the world birding centers, and they're part of a system. And they're there because they are super places to see birds. And they range in places from all the way at South Padre Island, all the way to Roma. So I think there are 9, they call them wings of the World Birding Center. The closest one to me is the World Birding Center, the Edinburgh Scenic Wetlands. That one's in Edinburgh, which is just about 25 miles from me. I live up north of I'm in the valley, but I'm up north, and it takes me a while to get into town. It's 25 miles to Edinburgh, south. But anyway, you can go to any of the World Birding Center locations. We have state parks. One of them is Estero Grande State Park is a wetland down on the border, and that one's in Weslaco. So I really like going to Estero Grande State Park. That's a nice place in Weslaco. Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge, that's another really great one. That's in Alamo, right on the border. And that's considered one of the jewels of the system for the National Wildlife System, National Wildlife Refuge. And all the city parks are really great too. I mean, Hugh Ramsey is in Harlingen, Brownsville. All of the cities have parks, and they're actually, if you go online and do a search on where to see birds in the valley, you'll be amazed at all the websites.
Okay. Karen wants to know, do you go out to shoot specifically for a contest, or are you choosing from what you already have?
Oh, that's a great question. I really don't do contests anymore, but this year I just sort of got all excited about it. If you go to wildlifeinfocus.org, there's a website that talks about the contests that I'm in, and applications are closed. It's already going on. It's a long contest. It runs from January through June. And it's sort of like a scavenger hunt for photographers. There are 46 or 47 categories. And at the end of the contest, you have to turn in up to, but no more than 100 pictures. And it sounds easy because, you know, I've already shot 3,000 or 4,000 pictures, but most of them are culls. I don't even think I've got more than 2 or 3 pictures that I would consider entering. That's how it goes. But you just shoot and shoot and shoot. It's an Ironman contest because you've got basically assignments of all these different categories to shoot for. One of the new categories this year is, I think it's called, let's see, peace and tranquility. And they've never done that before. So that's very open to subjectivity. And as an artist, a photographer, you have to put what you think is going to answer that question. What is peace and tranquility visually? But most of the categories are, they have, I think, 14 different bird categories. And they've got mammals, insects and arachnids, you know, the invertebrates, and reptiles and amphibians. But the special categories are the ones that are really open to interpretation. Now, in answer to your question, do I shoot for a contest and pick my pictures from that? Or do I see a contest and then look at my pictures and decide what to go in? In this contest that I'm in right now, I'm shooting like an assignment. So I'm looking for certain things that they have as categories. But a lot of the contests, like there's one called Share the View, that one just ended. And that one, they have categories and you just put what you want in those categories. So it depends on the contest. I don't do contests very much anymore, but I got the new mirrorless camera, and my friend Debbie got a new mirrorless camera. Charles got a new, you know, different people who I know got these mirrorless cameras. And so we're all learning about them and working together. And so I got all excited about doing the contest, and I'm on a new and different ranch. I haven't identified it in my Instagram, but the pictures that you're seeing right now are from this new ranch for me. And it's different to be photographing on a different ranch. On this contest, the photographer and the ranch owner are paired together. So whatever pictures that we shoot on that ranch get entered into the contest, you know, as a partnership with that ranch. And whatever money that we win from the contest, we split 50-50 with the ranch owner. And that's pretty cool because the ranches that are working on their conservation for wildlife get rewarded for the efforts that they make to provide good habitat for the wildlife there. Long answer to a short question.
Can anyone join that contest? Are they all?
Anybody can enter that contest. They run it every other year from January to June, but entries, applications are closed now. I think they just closed a week or so ago.
Okay. Just for future FYI, what is the name of that contest?
It's called Wildlife in Focus, and their website is wildlifeinfocus.org. You can go there now and see the winners from the 2019 contest. They run the contest every other year.
Okay, great, thank you. Karen Slagle is asking, were you using a flash on the white owl carrying the rat?
Yes, that particular setup was planned ahead of time. The owls that use that box, the box is something that was placed there specifically for owls. So it's a wooden box, and the owls use it year after year. And they're accustomed to seeing people around it, not when there's babies in it, but they're accustomed to seeing people on the ranch. And what we do after their nesting period is we clean out the boxes because they don't do that. So it's ready for the next year. Those are barn owl boxes. And what I did for that was I did a setup so that I'm not there disturbing them when they're trying to feed their chicks. And so I've got flashes on stands and a beam that's set up. And when the owl flies through the beam, it breaks the beam, and that triggers my camera, which is on a tripod under the box.
Okay. Susan Hansen is wanting to know if you would talk about aspect ratio.
When I'm doing, let's say I'm going to post on Instagram, and we'll come back and answer specifically to her question, but for example, the aspect ratio of my DSLRs and mirrorless camera are 2 to 3. 24 by 36 if it was a film camera. So it's 2 to 3. And when I'm posting for Instagram, for example, if you post a picture that's 2 by 3 and it's a vertical, you're going to lose something on the top and the bottom. So typically I crop to 4 by 5. That's just the way I do it, because if you do a 4 by 5 ratio, you'll get the whole picture, whether it's horizontal or vertical.
Okay. So Susan, if you have more to that question that you'd like answered, pop that in the chat. We've got plenty of questions, so you've got time to type that out. Gil is asking, what was the price for those large framed canvas prints, and who do you use to have them printed?
Okay, I had to find a new printer because I love doing large prints, and I used to get them done in New Orleans. And last year when we were doing all the printing, it was right after the hurricane. And so I had to find a new printer because my printer friend, it was a personal friend and photographer, was caught up with repairs and all that. So I investigated, and one of the people I talked to was Jessica Monroe. She's a local artist, does beautiful paintings, very large paintings, and she gets her prints from paintings done at up in Corpus Christi. But I became acquainted with him. I went up and visited Ron Brandt. He's the owner. He and his wife own it, and shared some files with him. And he said, "Oh yeah, your files will be great for working with." And so we ran a test print, and all of the prints in that large exhibit, the smallest ones are 3 feet by 3 feet square. We use 3 different sizes: 3 feet by 3 feet, 3 feet by 4.5 feet, and 3 feet by 6 feet. And those are large prints. And when I looked at them, every time I go to that law firm, I'm blown away, because I'll walk right up to it. You know, because after not seeing it for a while, it's not that you doubt the quality, but when you go up and you look at the bird's eye, every detail is there. He does a beautiful job. We did canvas, gallery wrapped canvases for that exhibit. That's the look that the lawyer who had me do them wanted.
Yeah. So I'm useful. It's Art Castle Imaging, and they are in Corpus Christi, Texas. So it looks like it's artcastleimaging.com. So staying on that topic, Elaine wants to know, what's your preferred format for printing? And do you ever use archival materials like matting and framing, etc.?
Okay, well, Art Castle only uses archival materials for his printing. It's a professional printing company, and so everything that he produces is archival. He uses canvas and archival inks for his printing. And what I've done with him is mostly gallery wrapped canvases, and so I don't have any experience with his mounting that he would do for other prints, but well, he would use that too. When I've had a few prints made on paper, of course it's archival, and I bring them in to McAllen. There's a place called Artline, ARTLINE, and Jackie is the owner, and she's always there. And so Jackie works with all archival materials too. The mounts, the glass, everything is archival. If you're going to spend the money to do your prints right, you might as well get them framed right and know that they're taken care of.
Yeah.
If you go to either Art Castle or Artline, please tell them that I told you about them. They'll treat you well anyway, but it's nice to give referrals wherever I can.
Okay. Rob wants to know, can you give us any insight on what photo judges are looking for? He says, I have to admit that some photo contest winners leave me wondering what caught the judges' eyes.
Well, I ran wildlife photo contests for the Valley Land Fund, valleylandfund.com, for many years. And I sat in the room with the judges as they were judging. So I've got some insight to that. And one thing I'm going to say, it's very basic usually, the things that I told you that my students all know: focus, exposure, composition, content, the story, and the wow factor. And sometimes the wow factor gets them more excited than maybe the first four things. They are looking for something new and different. Everybody has done this bird before, or this railroad track, or whatever you're photographing, try and find a new way to do it that you've never seen before, because anytime you do something new and different, you're going to catch the judge's eye. However, that said, I saw a 4-H contest, a photo contest. So these are kids taking pictures, and depending on who the judging panel is going to make a very big difference in who is going to win. If you had the same judging panel on 3 different days doing the same pictures, there probably are going to be some differences. But let's just say you put a panel of elderly ladies who do not know photography and they're judging kids' pictures. And the year, this goes back 10, 15 years ago, I was just shocked that the picture that they picked for best of contest was a little baby in a high chair, and the kid was covered in spaghetti sauce, and the picture wasn't in focus. And so that's a personal experience of seeing firsthand that it depends on who the judges are, and they're not always qualified. So be careful of what contests you enter. Look for contests with integrity, and I think you'll be happier than just entering a contest that just pops up on the internet that you don't know about.
So Jamie wanted to know, can you just tell us again what your mirrorless camera is?
Oh, I'm shooting with the Canon R5. It's the newest mirrorless camera that Canon has put out, and it's considered a prosumer camera. That means it's got professional features, but it's also mostly a consumer camera. There will be a pro version coming out, and I'm sure it will be much more expensive, but the Canon R5 is a super camera. I absolutely love it. The features, there are so many features that I love about it. One of the things, and this might not apply to everybody, because if you don't do birds and wildlife, it might not matter, but you can put it on a mechanical shutter where you can hear click, click, click. It's a soft click. But I like to use the electronic shutter, which goes 20 frames per second, and it is completely silent. And the thing you have to know when you're doing that is to have a very delicate touch, because if you just push the shutter down and don't think about it, you've taken 50 or 60 pictures, because it just goes and goes. And so delete becomes your friend. What I have learned that is, if I do a very quick and light touch, that I can actually take just 3 pictures when I do that. It's very sensitive. So just a quick touch and you're going to get 3 pictures, and they're all different because the bird is moving. But that's one of the features I love. There's something called eye focus, and I use rear focus for focusing my camera. So my thumb is always focusing the picture, and my finger is taking the picture. But when I'm working on a bird, I get the bird in focus, and then I switch to the programmable button right next to the rear focus, which is eye focus. And what that does, the camera looks for the eye, and it sticks to that eye. So as the bird moves left and right, or closer and farther away, that focus, if you leave your thumb down on the eye focus, it's continually focusing on the bird. So if it moves a little to the left, the focus follows the eye. It's amazing.
Okay. She says that she was hoping you'd say that. She was wondering now, let's throw some gossip in. Do you have any idea when they'll release that, or have you heard any rumors?
I haven't heard any rumors about the pro version, but I am really happy with what I've got right now. So I'm not looking. I know there's a website, I think it's called canonrumors.com or something like that. And I just don't like spending lots of time on the computer except when I need to. So I don't do a lot of surfing the web. So I'm not the person to ask what are the rumors. If I want to know something that's coming along, I'll ask Canon or one of the Canon reps.
Okay. So Susan Hansen did come back, and she was really curious about the aspect ratio for Instagram.
Oh, well, I think I sort of answered that.
I think you did. Can you just do it one more time?
Yes, I'll review that. So the aspect ratio that I use when I'm preparing my images for Instagram is I'll do horizontal or vertical, but I generally always use 4 by 5. So it would be basically 4 inches by 5 inches or 5 inches by 4 inches. If I want to do something else and include the whole picture without Instagram cropping it, in Photoshop, I add canvas. So if I want to have a panoramic picture, I add canvas at the top and the bottom, which makes it a little bit more square or closer to that 4 by 5. And I work out the numbers so that I get a 4 by 5 ratio of the whole picture, but some of it's gray or white or black, depending on how I do it, where there's no picture. And you can do the same thing for a vertical. Or if, let's say you want to use your 2 by 3, which is your DSLR or your mirrorless, you just add a little bit of canvas on the short side so that you're widening the picture, and then you scale it to 4 by 5. You can, I know Susan through Instagram, if you need help with that, just let me know and I'll help you over the phone.
Thank you. So another question from her is, how do you determine what to charge for a photo? Do you want to?
That's very tricky.
It is tricky.
So many people are so anxious to make that sale that they sell themselves short, and you want to not do that. Now, if you're a beginner, of course, you're not going to charge the same thing as I'm charging for my, 3 feet by 6 feet gallery wrapped canvases as part of a collection. I sold him 30 pictures and I did give him a discount for that. But you don't want to undercut yourself thinking, well, I'm just a beginner, or, well, I don't think they'll pay that. I know somebody in New Orleans who says, oh, they won't pay that here. That's rubbish. Art is very subjective. And if somebody likes what you've got, they will pay it if they have the budget. And if they make you an offer, you have to decide if you want to go there or not. I generally don't negotiate. I figure out my cost, how much effort did I have to put to get that photo? Did I have to travel to Costa Rica? Well, I don't know. Do my Costa Rica pictures count for more money than my South Texas pictures? Well, it really doesn't matter. You have to figure out what the cost of the picture was to make. And I don't just mean the ink and the paper and paying the fee to, like at Art Castle or wherever you get your printing done. You have to figure out what the cost is to you. You double that, and that's just your picture cost, and then you have your artist or photographer's fee for doing the picture. It can vary quite a bit. I don't go cheap when I get my pictures made. I know you can go to Costco or Sam's Club or Walgreens, but you're not getting the best quality. I know they have good equipment, but they've just got employees, printing the pictures. They're not photographers. Well, some of them are, I guess, but I have to say that I like going to a place that I know is super picky. And if there's a color shift in my file that I sent, that they're going to say something. They're not just going to print it and put it on auto to fix it. So I don't go cheap when it comes to making the prints. So there's a whole art to pricing your work. And it's the same thing with artists. When they work like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks on making a picture, that takes a lot of time. And if you're going to charge minimum wage, you're not going to get very much for it. You have to put everything into it, consider everything that goes into creating what you've done.
Sue is asking, do you print any of your own photos?
Not anymore. I'm very good at printing, but I don't want to do that. It means staying inside, and I'd much rather be outside.
Yeah. Okay, so one last question and then we'll wrap up for tonight. I think it goes back to your R5. Patty wants to know, how's the eye focus when the bird is at a distance or at a relatively small proportion of the photo?
Works. To me, it's magic. I don't know if it's artificial intelligence or what, but it seems to be magic. Now, if I'm doing a bird in flight and it's, like let's say it's a raptor flying across the sky, I get it in focus, but I switch to eye focus and it doesn't necessarily find the eye, but it just locks onto that bird. It might not be huge in the frame. And if you can keep the camera on the bird, the eye focus is going to keep the focus on the bird. And if you have enough depth of field and enough shutter speed and all the conditions are right, it's amazing what it can do. I mean, you have to try it. I'm going to say, if you come down with me and you go with me to one of the ranches, I'll do demos if you don't have a camera, or if you buy one and need help with it, I do instruction.
Great. All right, Ruth, let's wrap up tonight. Is there anything, closing words of wisdom that you want to just throw at us so that we can sleep on it?
I guess what I would say is that if you're passionate about whatever you're photographing, it's going to come through in your pictures. And once you have the technical capabilities, that you have a control over your focus and your exposure, and you learn about composition, you'll start feeling what looks right, and it will escalate as you practice. Practice makes perfect, and none of us, I can say, is perfect that I know of, but we can try and keep trying and be really hard on yourself when you're looking at your pictures. Cull with a heavy hand. And what I need to say something about that real quick. I do cull with a heavy hand. I barely pick any of my pictures to show, but I have 2 drives, and I didn't talk about that tonight. I have 2 drives, and I put, let's just call them A and B. A is your main one, B is your backup. And so A is the only drive I look at. I never touch the other drive. So I can cull, delete, get rid of anything I want in drive A, knowing that I still have it in drive B untouched.
Okay.
I am going to do a talk this Sunday at 2:00. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the same subject, but I'll talk more. I know this show was abbreviated and you were surprised how quickly it went, but I knew there would be a lot of questions. So I purposely kept it sort of short, but I will go for almost a full hour of just talking on this same subject.
Okay. Well, Ruth, I talked to you, probably, you're one of those people, I at least talk maybe once a week or so. It's like a text or, oh, I'm just going to call her. So, I feel like, oh, I just saw you. But every time I talk to you, every time I listen to you, I learn something different. And I always say this, but it's very generous of you to come and share what you know with, people that are excited about wildlife photography, nature photography, and you're very forthcoming with information. And for that, I really appreciate your willingness to share. And
I love to share.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like that too, and that's why I love having you on. So thank you.
I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you a question.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If you don't want to do that,
I don't know that people are allowed to ask me questions, but go ahead.
What was your takeaway from tonight? What did you learn about?
I need to cull harder and work at really getting those shots that are different and unique. And I'm going to go to, I've seen it a couple of times, is your turkey shot, getting hit, shaking and, shaking that dirt off. I see a lot of so I'm from South Texas. Ruth says she's from South Texas, but Ruth is really down in deep South Texas. I'm from real South Texas. And so I see a lot of wild turkeys on my little back road wanderings, and none of them do anything interesting. So they just kind of walk around. So I don't know how I need to get them to shake their booty, but looking at those kinds of shots, that they kind of they pop off the screen, and they kind of want to make me go delete all the ones I have and start over. So it gives me something to strive for, so aim for. So and that's one of the reasons I like to shoot with people that are better photographers than me. And there's a handful of them in the room today or tonight. And every time you go out, you learn something new. And that's kind of why I like talking to you about stuff like that. So that's what in my own little mental note, you gotta get something more unique. So that was my takeaway.
Thank you.
Guys, you can connect with Ruth at ruthhoyt.com. And if you're on Instagram, please give her a follow at Ruth Hoyt Photo. And as she mentioned, she does her own Zoom sessions on the third Sunday of every month.
It's usually the third. Yeah.
So go and she posts about it in her Instagram posts, the week of, and then you can always probably check it out on her website for the schedule. And you'll need to touch base with her so that you can get the password links. All right. Tomorrow, we're going to double up. Thursday, January 28th, we are serving up another session, this time with Alabama photographer Keith Bozeman. In a session he's called Planning for Great Light. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.